Hey guys, it's Matt here, and on today's episode of Matt Rants, I'm going to talk about something that has kind of been somewhat ticking me off recently. Now, this isn't something that is making me like really get super duper angry and like feeling like throwing stuff, across the room, it's like, oh no. It's like nothing to that level of extremes where I'm looking at my controller and I'm going, should I throw it against the couch? Nothing that crazy, right? I'm not, we're not 7 anymore, right? So nothing that big or major, but it's something that's been kind of taking me off, and I don't really see that many people talking about it. At least personally, I don't. So I kind of would like it maybe if we start talking about this. Maybe some of you guys talk about this in the comments below. Now, what am I talking about here, right? Well, I'm sure you saw from the title of the video, from the thumbnail. I'm asking the question: why are we calling these remasters? Right? And you might be wondering what I'm referring to in particular. Perhaps stuff like the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, and I have Spyro in the thumbnail as well. We don't know how Spyro is going to play just yet, but if it's anything like Crash Bandicoot's Insane Trilogy, then I'm going to be a little ticked off. And let me explain to you guys why, right? So when I think of a remaster, and just the word remaster makes me think of, in a sense, an upscale, right? Or taking the original raw, files and making them look a little bit cleaner, polishing them up a little bit, but not necessarily making something from the ground up. So when I look at something like the God of War trilogy that was released on the PS3, or the Sly Cooper trilogy that was also released on the PS3. Not sure why I'm chugging along with a bunch of PS3 re-releases, but there was obviously some for the PS2 as well. There have been ports that have been upgraded, quote unquote, here and there. I'm pretty sure the PSP Persona ports from the PS1, I'm pretty sure they may have done something to make the graphics look a little bit better. I know there's some that we don't like how the Chrono Trigger PC port is like the mobile port. Not many of us are fans of those graphics. But at the end of the day, from what I've heard about all of those different ports, I know the Persona ports, I think they got a few different things here and there that may have been cut from the PS1 version, or it was considered like a director's cut, if you will. But most of the time, even if there's some new things added, like stories or quests or things like that, at the end of the day, the gameplay mechanics are the same. The hitboxes are similar. The enemies are similar. You can get experience in the same way and stuff like that. Everything looks similar, just a little bit better. Or in some cases, we can argue a little bit worse, but in the sense that it looks better, quote unquote, than the original for some reason or another, right? So when I look at something like the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, and I'm playing it, and I play it side by side with Crash Bandicoot 2, which I've not only played on this channel for Matt Beats Games from his childhood, but I've played a lot when I was a kid. Like, that's actually one of the games that for Matt Beats Games from his childhood, I actually beat. Right? Because many of these I'm trying to beat, I'm trying to finish up. I'm still trying to finish some of them up. And so I'm sitting here like, oh, I would like to beat this again because I loved it so much. So when playing that and knowing exactly what's going to be timed where, what's going to hit where, what's going to, hitting with this, hitting this button, i.e., let's say spinning, spin attack, right? So doing spin attack means that, boom, I hit the enemy, we're good. Jumping means that I jumped at the right time. Did this, and especially with a game like Crash Bandicoot, timing is key. I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? The timing is key. So when playing the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, some people said, oh, it's so awesome that, the timing is different. After all, I knew it so well when I was a kid, so now trying to replay this game is actually harder and it's giving me more of a challenge. And I'm not saying that that is bad. In a way, I actually kind of like that a little bit, right? Like, I can play the game and have something a little bit different. But the question is that, does that make it a remaster then? Is it not a remake? Right, because it's not a reimagining, of course. Right, this isn't like the later Spyro games with like Elijah Wood or anything like that. It's not a reimagining of Crash Bandicoot, or in this case Spyro. It's not a reimagining at all. But why are we calling it a remaster? Yes, some would say, but Matt, the graphics look amazing, right? Of course, it's a remaster. It's taking the original game. It's still, a copy paste of the original game. It just looks better. But the question becomes the reason why, and I know it's video games, and video games are such a different medium when compared to some other mediums, but when I think about a movie, right? When I think about a movie and I think about taking a movie that was on VHS and putting it on DVD, and the quality looks a lot better, of course, because now we're able to use different techniques in just putting it on the disc is a lot different than having to compress it for the VHS, also for tube TVs at the time and stuff like that, and then putting it on Blu-ray. In some cases, it's sadly upscaled, but in other cases, the film masters are they are exactly what the specs need to be for Blu-ray. So widescreen and obviously a bunch of other technical mumbo jumbo that I clearly know. I just can't tell you guys now because it'll blow your mind. But the point is, though, all jokes aside, is that there are some movies that their masters are so good that they had to be downscaled just to fit the tech for the time. I believe The Wire was a show that filmed in HD, but at the time, again, it was downscaled. Same thing with Friends, which is why now when we look at the Friends in HD on Netflix, and I don't know if there's Friends Blu-rays, but I think on the DVDs even, newer DVD releases, you can see certain things like shots of different extras and boom mics and things that at the time were actually cut off because of televisions and all that stuff. But now, because things have gotten a bit different, and they've actually, instead of just stretching the cut versions that they had, they actually just decided, well, we filmed them in a way that would work with current modern TVs anyway. Let's just release that. But my point is that a remaster to me is taking, even if it's an upscale, right? Even if it's a bad upscale, a good upscale, still an upscale is an upscale. It's upscaling this footage, is taking something and putting it on a Blu-ray. It's not making a shot-by-shot reshoot, right? I know it might sound silly to say the same thing, super redundant, right? Redundant, man. But a shot-by-shot, I'm going to use the word remake here, right? Of just like if I saw Jurassic Park on Blu-ray, right? Yes, you can go back and you can make some of the dinosaurs look better. You can CGI over them. And so I'm sitting back and I'm like, I wonder who did that, George Lucas. I wonder who did that, CBS for Star Trek. But my point here is that while that has happened, there's a big difference between doing that and going back to every single person in the movie and going, you know what? You can see a little bit of grain there. Grant, I know I'm just gonna call them by their actors' names, other than like Jeff Goldblum. Jeff Goldblum, by their characters' names rather, other than Jeff. But with Jeff, as if I know him. But with the Goldblum, the thing is that imagine if they were like, oh, Jeff Goldblum, it's a little bit too much grain around the face. Instead of putting it through some really awkward filter that makes him look like a mannequin, which has happened with Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Instead of doing that and making him look like a wax Madame Tussauds figure, let's just recast Goldblum as someone else completely. And people would go, but wait, but that's a remake. And imagine if then it was said, no, it's not a remake. It's a remaster. See, doesn't it look great now that it's being filmed in 2018? Could you imagine if it just got Jeff Goldblum back to just do all of his scenes from the original Jurassic Park? Actually, as I say that out loud, it does not sound as bad as I'm making it sound. But the point is that when you are taking these original files and instead of just upscaling them in some way or another and recreating not just the files themselves, but the hitboxes, the way the game plays, yes, the plot is exactly the same. But you could argue that the same thing would be true if it's still looking at movies here. The same thing would be true if it's a shot-for-shot remake. The only difference being is that it's in 2018 or whatever year you're listening to this in. That's the only difference, at least in my opinion. So when you look at something like, because even with something like the colorization of black and white film, something that I'm definitely not a big fan of at all, right? Still, it's still the same movie, the exact same movie. You just added something onto it that a fair amount of people don't like. But just because we don't like it doesn't mean that it's not the same movie shot for shot, right? In that regard, yes, that's a quote-unquote remaster, if you will. right? If you really want to call it that. But it's a bit different than literally doing a shot for shot remake in whatever present year it is, and then calling that a straight up remaster. It's just not the same. So I don't know what to call these games. I'm not saying that remaster is the worst word that can be used, but I feel like we have to come up with a different name if now all of a sudden we're going to start getting games with different gameplay mechanics, or at least different timing and things like that, and not just having a game like I believe it was the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure game for the PS1, that was re-released on the PS3, and it was upscaled, so it looks beautiful, it's in HD, looks great on your television, but as far as I've heard and as far as I know, the gameplay is exactly the same. So if we're going to get away from that model and start going to a model where we're now going to start remaking PS1 classics, kind of like actually, funnily enough, when we talk about the Final Fantasy VII game, right, that's coming out for, the PS6, PS7, we don't know. When we talk about that game, we don't call it a remaster of the PS1's Final Fantasy VII. We call it a remake, and we call it that for a reason. Now, yes, people have said, or I think it was Square Enix that said the game is going to span, it's going to be like 2 different parts potentially. So, yes, maybe some people feel like, it's different because of how it's going to be cut up and, and stuff like that. But the point is that even if the game played exactly the same, it looks completely different. I mean, we've seen the cutscenes. The cutscenes do not look like Final Fantasy VII on the PS1, the way it was released at the time. But no one would say, it's a remaster. Wow, I can't believe they did that with all those small pixels. No, that would be odd, right? And I know to some people it's a bit different. And again, maybe I sound whiny. Maybe this is one of my whiniest Matt Rants yet. But to me, I just feel so odd about the word remaster being applied to these games. Now, maybe Spyro is going to be exactly the same, and I'm wrong. And it's just something that happened with Crash, and this isn't going to be a trend, and it just happened with that, and so be it, right? That's just what happened with Crash. But if this starts to happen with other games, I do feel like we have to find just a different word to use. Now, maybe people just accept that, no, remaster for video games means this. And if you use the word upscale, then it means just that, right? Just upscaling. But I don't know. I just feel like again, it's not something that I'm going to rage against the machine over. But it's definitely something that kind of has gotten to me, just hearing different media outlets and different news outlets saying, the new remaster Crash Bandicoot N Sane Trilogy is coming to the Switch. And the new remaster of Spyro the Dragon is coming to the PS4 and Xbox One. It's getting me, I don't know, I'm just sitting back here and I'm thinking, but that's not a remaster, right? Many of us who might be fans of anime have seen some, actually, funnily enough, Dragon Ball Z Kai, or Dragon Ball Kai, that could be considered a remaster of the original Dragon Ball Z. Yes. But once we get to the opening of Dragon Ball Z Kai, and even just Dragon Ball Super, right? Just because it's a new anime, right? Or the opening itself, rather, was new animation, completely new 3D animation. I wouldn't call the opening for Dragon Ball Z Kai, nor would I call Dragon Ball Super a remaster. And I know some of you guys are going to go, no, but it's completely different. It's a completely different structure and everything like that. But they're still taking similar character models and designs, and it's like, it's in 2018. It's, well, I mean, not for Kai, of course, but it's new and it's exactly the same thing, and it's not, right? We know that when it comes to something like animation or with films, the word remaster carries the idea that it's the same thing, only it looks better. And if any of you guys have played the original 3 Crash Bandicoots, and you play Crash Bandicoot N Sane Trilogy, in no way am I shitting on the Insane Trilogy. The rest of the internet can do that just fine. In no way am I shitting on the Insane Trilogy. It's just not a remaster. But hey, maybe you guys disagree with me. Maybe you think I suck. Maybe you think I'm awesome. What matters is that whatever you think, please comment below, because I really want to hear what you guys think. What you guys think about this whole remaster. I'm not gonna call it a controversy because I made it, so it's really awkward to be like this controversy that I just made up. So I don't think it's a controversy necessarily, but this debate, we can call it that. I would love to hear what you guys have to say. Please remember to like and subscribe if you liked the video, and if you didn't like the video and you hate me, you can still hate comment, you can hate subscribe, and you watch all our videos filled with hate in your heart. Anyway, guys, thank you all so much for listening in. Love you all. Take care. Hope you had fun and hope you enjoyed this episode of Matt Rants. So see you next time with another episode of Matt Rants. So see ya.